Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knights of the Dawn podcast, where we talk about everything Brandon Mull. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jessica.
And this week, we'll be covering chapters 20 through 23 of Book 4 of Fablehaven, Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this one's the fun one. We really get into the meat of Wormroost a bit more than we did in the last section.
Yeah. It's exciting, for sure. Last week, we left off, last episode, we left off with Seth revealing himself so that Kendra didn't get eaten by Nafia, and they discovered that together, holding hands, they have the power of a single dragon tamer between the two of them. So that's exciting.
And honestly, like, Gavin talks about it a little bit later, like, it's more than just being, like, a dragon tamer, because technically Trask and Mara and, who am I forgetting? Trask and Mara, they're also...
And Gavin, but
yeah, he's something else. But Trask and Mara, they are traditional dragon tamers, but even them, like, if a dragon is bearing down on them, if they make eye contact, they're done.
True.
Seth and Kendra, they don't have that same handicap. They can look a full-grown dragon, directly in the eyes, who is, like, bearing down on them with all of their draconic terror, and still hold their own. So, yeah, it's almost like the others are, like, the equivalent of Patton Burgess level. They're fairy touched, or fairy...
Fairy struck.
Fairy struck, right. They're fairy struck, whereas together they're dragon struck, whereas Seth and Kendra together are dragon kind.
Yeah.
Kind of, they're on the same level as
It's the matching
Gavin.
of their powers together that gives them...
Which we get to talk about.
Yeah, we do right now. Because Kendra is like, what the frick are you doing here, Seth? And he's like, well, if I wasn't here, you would be dead, so be happy.
And low-key, though, like, the way Seth says it, like, Kendra is, like, clearly emotionally stressed. Like, she was just chased by a dragon. He just popped out of nowhere. We've been through a lot the past few minutes. And she's like, look at Warren. Like, because Warren is now laying on the ground, having been, like, his stomach been gored by a periton.
Yeah.
And she's like, look at him. He could be dying. You could die here. Why do you want to be here? Because she still sees him as kind of like the younger brother.
He is only 13.
He's only 13.
He has very relevant powers, which no one's used to yet.
Yeah,
so.
but she's not seeing it right now. She's just like, he wanted to come see the cool dragons.
Yeah.
And she's like trying to show him, people could die here. And I love how he's like, yeah, including you. That's why I'm here.
He's like, I'm trying to help it not happen.
Like, he literally said, I know what it feels like to bury you, and I'd rather not go through it again.
Oof. How do you argue against that?
You can't argue with that.
Yeah. It's funny because they go up to everyone that's with Warren. And Warren's like, well, looks like the cat's out of the bag.
Which is great because it's a knapsack.
And then Dugan is like, you knew about Seth? I might have caught wind of his presence.
And I mean, nobody's going to say anything. The man's
No,
dying.
I mean, yeah, he's injured and on the ground, half dead. You're not going to be mad at him. So.
If anything, Warren's the maddest person here. He's like, dang it. Of all the things to be taken out by.
Exactly.
At a dragon sanctuary, I get taken down by a deer.
Freaking deer.
And honestly, though, like, I don't think I ever realized how close Warren was to, like, being lost, it seems like. Dugan is freaking out a little bit, it says.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically stabbed.
Yeah, in the gut, which is bad.
Yeah, that usually means death most times. Without magical healing things. Like, Tanu comes
or modern medicine.
Yeah.
But, like, are we near a hospital? No, we're at a dragon sanctuary.
We just have Tanu. Thankfully, Tanu does enough to help Warren not dying, but he's in excruciating pain.
Helped slightly by one of the best jokes in the entire series. We've been waiting for this one, guys.
Yeah.
We've been waiting.
Well, first of all, Warren says, sharp antlers, Warren gasped. Not a very impressive way to go. Stabbed by a deer. Don't put that on my tombstone. Blame the dragon.
Which, I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah. And Seth.
Later on, Tanu's like, I have a little bit of a headache. My pride took the biggest hit. Your pride, Warren griped, his speech slurred. I was vanquished by a deer.
A giant magical flying deer with fangs, Seth said, parroting the description Gavin had shared earlier.
That sounds a little better, Warren conceded. Seth is in charge of my tombstone.
Classic.
It's
Classic.
Two Burgess men.
Seth is in charge of my tombstone.
Two Burgess men just having fun.
Yep.
When one of them's dying.
I feel like it's always Seth to be like, Warren, you almost died in a cool way. He did the same thing with like the fire, like two-headed fire-breathing, three-headed flying panther or whatever.
Instead of just being like, yeah, I nearly died by a cat. You know, it's fine. But like, no.
Warren is selling himself short, and Seth is like, no. I'm the one who appreciates how cool it is because we're the same.
We are not letting this die.
I'm going to describe it how it deserves.
Yeah, Seth still needs to come into the humility that Warren has acquired over his vast amount of experience.
Seth just gets Warren, so he's like, no. You need to describe it right.
We need to make sure posterity remembers this for what it was.
Hence the tombstone.
What is it with Burgess men and tombstones? First, Patton.
I mean, Patton has a fake one.
What did Patton say? It said something.
Oh, could look back. It's in this book.
It is. Hang on. Oh, Patton Burgess, word to the wise, tread lightly among dragons.
That's such a good line. In a dragon sanctuary. That's funny.
Especially when
I wonder if he's like
trolling the dragons.
Yeah, he's trolling the dragons. He's like, Agid, please put this on my fake tombstone. And Agid's like, okay, I got you, bro, I guess.
So many tombstones in this book, my goodness.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, too. I keep saying last week. It wasn't last week.
It was a couple weeks ago. It's okay.
Last episode.
We'll survive. Okay, so... All right. We love it. We love the Burgess men. We've established this. Specifically Warren. Seth, not yet.
Yeah. And then after that, we're going back to Kendra being mad at Seth, being like, why the frick are you here? I didn't need saving. He's like, Gavin would have saved me. Gavin's like, well, actually, I don't think I could have gotten to you in time. So it's really good that Seth was there.
So he's trying to clearly score some brownie points with the brother.
Yeah. And Kendra's like, well, Seth shouldn't even be here. Wormroots is a death trap. I don't want him to die. So.
Cue Seth. Yeah. Well, I don't want you to die. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Kendra goes, okay, fine. I'm glad you helped me. Too bad Grandma and Grandpa are now going to kill you.
Yeah. Let's just mention how much they must be losing their minds.
Oh, 100%.
Like, we don't even know.
Because at this point, like, from their perspective, they've got to be assuming
been a couple days.
He's either dead in the forest, which I hope at this point we've trusted enough in his capabilities to think, okay, he's not that dumb anymore. But at the same time, is he dumb enough to sneak off to a dragon sanctuary?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
But then Seth talked about how, like, he helped Warren with the fear when they were fighting a fear, and he's like, okay, well, I can be an asset here, so that's why I came.
Yeah.
So he's trying to advocate himself and dig himself out of this large hole that he has put himself in.
Which, I mean, they're not going to be able to do anything about it anyway.
Exactly.
Like, he's here, they're there.
And
what are we going to do about it at this point?
That's what I think Trask says, or someone's like, well, we can't do anything about it now, so you have to take the consequences of your actions and join us. So
yep.
Yeah. Which he's happy to do. So
yeah, and it kind of goes into what we were talking about last episode with, like, why together their abilities combined make it work. Seth has the immunity to the dragon terror. Kendra has the ability to keep her mind clear together. We got it. Yeah. All right. We also got an extra breakdown of dragon fear, where Kendra's like, but I could talk to Shalise. I could talk to Camerat. Even if I couldn't move, I could still talk to him.
Yeah.
And then a little bit extra info from Gavin. They're basically saying Shalise A was very young, and Camerat wasn't, like, bearing full down on him. He was just curious.
Yeah.
Nafia, on the other hand, was bearing down on them as a full-grown dragon with all of her might.
Full hunter mode.
Mode.
Not caring about not using.
Intensely trying to intimidate.
Yes.
So.
Using all of her power.
Yeah. And that's why she got no shot
Yeah.
until Seth comes out of the back. Like, I doubt even Mara and Trask are holding up under that.
Yeah, it really is only Gavin alone that could do it.
And now the combined might of Seth and Kendra.
Yeah.
Congrats.
But they have to be touching. So it's a bit of a handicap, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they take Warren and they put him in the knapsack so that they can transport him along, and then they start going back along their road, and they reach a place called a sidestep cleft, which is like,
I mean, the walk up to it alone must be terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like just like it describes it as just like a steep mountain track with a sheer drop off on either side.
mm-hmm.
No, thank you.
And it's just like a big crack through like the cliffs or the mountain or whatever.
Then I'm
And so
getting back
basically they're like, either we can camp on this side of sidestep cleft for tonight, or we can go on the other side, which enters the domain of Thronus, the sky giant. And they're like, well, nowhere's really safe in Wormroost, but I think it's a slightly tad bit safer on the side that's not in Thronus' territory. So that's where they camp for the night.
Yeah, if we're talking about a scale of danger from 1 to 10, I'll take the 8.5 over the 9.9.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's like the relative danger scale we're talking about
Yeah.
here.
So, yeah. They all set up camp and go to bed, and they take turns keeping watch.
I find this bit interesting. As Seth's going to sleep, we have his we get his perspective as he's starting to bed down.
Yeah.
And he's like looking up at the stars and being very reflective, like, man, it's so he's being very reflective,
Very introspective.
Very introspective, talking
Yeah.
about how, like, looking up at the stars, they're so far away. He's like, interesting how if you're standing at the edge of a cliff looking down, that'll make you wobbly, but like the stars are much farther away. Why are we more intimidated by that distance? Very, very deep philosophical, right?
For a 13-year-old.
And then we have, by contrast, we have Kendra's POV after she's woken up for her turn on watch. And she's just here like, what's the point? She's like, what's the point? Why am I keeping watch?
She's like,
It didn't, like, we were all awake when the Peritons, like,
Yeah.
dropped in. This isn't gonna help. Why am I here?
and if there's anything bad that's coming, Mendigo will come before I see anything. So she's like, what am I doing?
What's the point?
I
just
don't
love
know.
the
Kendra.
contrast.
Yeah,
I just love
that's
the
funny. I didn't
contrast.
think of that. So that's like, oh, look at the stars. Wow.
Amazing.
The
Something
meaning
so
of
far
life.
away.
I don't know. And then Kendra's like, what the frick am I? Why am I up? I want to sleep.
But no, she needs to be up because we need to have one of our main characters meet Nisa.
Yeah. So Kendra's on her watch, which is like probably like the last one before morning, you know.
I think Seth has one before. It says Seth is next, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's like in the early morning, I guess. I don't know. But she hears the jingling of Mendigo, and he comes up with describing a tall, beautiful woman. The lovely stranger had aristocratic features, chiseled cheekbones, flawless skin, imperious eyes. A flowing gauzy gown hung from her lithe frame. There's a lot of descriptors in this.
Yeah,
And golden sandals clad her feet. Most striking was her hair, a lustrous cascade of silvery blue. Aside from her air of casual confidence, nothing about this woman suggested that she should be roaming a dangerous mountainous sanctuary in the middle of the night. So,
I feel like we've had the aristocratic adjective before. Am I wrong?
probably. I don't know.
I don't know. It feels familiar.
I didn't realize how descriptive that description was until
Yeah.
I read it out loud. I was like, oh my
Uh-huh.
gosh, lots of big words in here.
She didn't even finish. It talks more about like her age, the
Oh,
silver in
yeah.
her hair, stuff like that.
It just kept going on.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm done.
It's a decent chunk, but we're good.
Anyway.
You get the idea.
So
She's
yeah,
pretty.
it's Nefia's human avatar, and she goes by Nissa.
Which I like. It's
Yeah.
very interesting.
It is interesting to be like, oh, I'm in a different form. I'm going to change my name.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, the thoughts of dragons, and she talks about this, like how when she was a dragon, she wasn't thinking about it, but now that afterwards, she's like, I want to go talk to the humans. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen a human and I don't know how long, and I don't know how long it will be till I see another human. So it's kind of a novelty to her. And she's like, well, I guess I'll go as a human. And then, you know, in her human form, she thinks slightly differently, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, but it makes sense, you know? Like, dragons and magical creatures have different motivations and different aspirations and, you know, thought processes. Like Lena when she was a naiad versus when she was immortal. So, just another example.
Yeah, and I think also it talks about how, like, when they're in dragon form, like, yeah, you're saying they think differently, but also because just thinking about kind of what Brandon said, like in regards to the satyrs, when they interact with humanity, they are able to grow and change a bit more easily.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of similar to here with dragons. Like, they have some more human qualities, like a bit more curiosity, a bit more not quite as bloodthirsty. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
They're not as like quick to jump on the gun when they're in human form. I think also partially like when they're in dragon form, they're darn near invincible. You're not taking down a dragon.
Oh yeah.
Unless it's another dragon. Whereas
human form is more vulnerable.
Like it was talking about while they're talking, Trask has his crossbow trained on her and he's in the shadows. And Trask is like, I could have taken her out. And Gavin's like, yeah, and it would have killed her. So I think, honestly, her being, just like the giving up of the invincibility.
Yeah, that's...
And taking on a more human form.
Interesting.
I think it does attribute somewhat to the more human-like characteristics that they adopt as well. And also, let's say, they get a bit more cunning as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so she comes with some very interesting and dangerous information. Because she's offering her services, which is ring, 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 bad, red flag, red flag, red flag.
They are going to the dragon temple, and if any dragon knows, they will kill them.
It has been expressly stated that do not tell anybody where you're going.
No snitching.
No snitching. Not at all. Which, of course, Seth decides to break this section. But,
that was under duress.
Yeah, he was between a rock and a hard place.
It was either do it or die.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
It
wasn't to a dragon. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But so that's red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 is, well, she's also threatening their lives as dragons do.
Yeah.
I said less bloodthirsty, not human.
Yeah.
And then 3, Novarog's outside. Yay!
Wow, that's really bad.
Very bad. She's like, yeah, we got some rumors flying around. Apparently, Mr. Big Bad Dragon Demon is waiting outside. And, how interesting that he arrives just at the same time you guys did.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
So, yeah, they're like, Gavin's trying to dance around the fact that they're going to the Dragon Temple. He's like, we're here on a secret mission, and sorry, but we can't accept your help. But thank you. Please don't kill us.
Trying not to offend.
Yeah. Don't offend the thing that can turn into something that can eat you.
I think that's a great rule of thumb, actually.
It is,
I think that's a great rule of life. Don't offend things that can eat you.
Yes.
Never tickle the sleeping dragon.
There you go.
Okay, so Nisa seems to take the rejection
fairly well.
Well enough.
Yeah.
And walks away.
Well enough she doesn't eat them.
She doesn't eat them. Yeah, I think that's pretty good, actually.
That's actually the best you could hope for.
At this point, pretty much. Okay, and also I like how it mentions, like, the main reason she's here is just because she wants to poke the bear because she's a dragon. She doesn't care if she pokes the bear.
It's not even her poking a bear.
Yeah, she wants to poke them out. Well, no, as a dragon, she's poking a bear.
She's playing cat and mouse with them.
She is. And she's just like, I want you to entertain me. Move. Dance.
Exactly.
She's the person at the zoo tapping on the glass.
I was about to say,
interesting.
Is she like, move?
Yes, she's Dudley. He's asleep.
He's boring. Sorry about him.
Move.
Move! It always goes back to Harry Potter.
Always comes back.
It's because we both have it memorized, so. The first 3 movies.
Low-key, the knock sound was...
And that was pretty
good.
Pretty perfect. And then, move!
That's low-key perfect.
That is what it sounds like. So, Kendra goes to sleep and dreams of basically Nissa and forming into dragon. So kind of a little bit of a nightmare of, dragons coming.
Lots of running, lots of screaming, your normal night terrors.
Yep.
I do like this last line from Trask and Gavin when they're referring to the fact, crap, we know now that Navarog's outside.
Oh, yeah.
And so Trask says, I'm not glad to hear Navarog is on our tail. I suppose it's no less than we expected, but it's a good deal less than we hoped, Gavin replied. Nobody argued. There weren't no stutter there. I didn't hear no stutter there.
Way to bring it down, Gavin. Thanks for that.
All right. So Warren's still alive. Next morning.
Yeah. Kendra's like, here's your breakfast. And he's
here's
like,
an orange.
Woohoo.
I've been shish kebabbed.
Yeah.
Oh, look. I've been impaled.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
Oh, you're right. It is that quote.
No, it's okay. No, you're good.
All right. Okay, so we move out again through Sidestep Clef, which does get so skinny in some parts that Tanu and Trask have to walk sideways. That's tight.
Yeah, that's really tight.
Have you ever gone
Can't fit a Samoan.
Yeah. Have you ever gone like there's this, I think it might have been like in southern Utah, it was like this area it was like old volcanic
There's
lava
lots of
caves
places in southern Utah.
Yeah, I imagine. Have you ever gone down in
like
one
caving
of them?
or
Yeah,
like
caving.
in Narrows?
It was caving. Like
I will never go caving ever.
It was a very
First of all,
I had to be persuaded.
No, I could never do that.
Yeah. For me, like just because I'm very long.
Yeah,
and I'm not very flexible.
Yeah.
I am not flexible at all. But like we went down there and there were some like wider spots where we would be in like areas with like where it was like pitch black all around, but like they had to get us like through some spots and I was just like
no.
no thank you. Like,
yeah, no thanks. Never.
no,
I don't think I have claustrophobia, but I do fear like pitch black not being able to see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't do it.
I do not like pitch black if I don't know what's around me.
Because then I feel like I definitely have the fear of the the instinctual fear of the unknown. I'm like, there's something out there.
That's healthy.
It is healthy.
That's healthy.
Yeah. No,
but yeah, so yeah, I'm just picturing that, especially because Kendra's saying she's looking up and like the cleft is not open to the sky. It's like literally.
It's probably like curved or like slanted a little.
But even that, I'm also picturing like Antelope Canyon, but it's just like.
What is Antelope Canyon?
It's down near Lake Powell in like southern Utah, northern Arizona.
The only places I've been in southern Utah is Bryce Canyon and Canyonlands.
Mm-hmm.
No, not Canyonlands. Capitol Reef.
It's basically chasms. It's basically the chasms, but
I've been in like
on
a
smaller
canyon,
scale,
but not so.
Yeah, on a much
narrow.
smaller. There's slot canyons.
Yeah,
very
slot
much,
canyons. That's
much
what they're called.
smaller scale
I was calling it narrows,
than
but that's one
like
of them.
chasms where you need like a 40-foot bridge to cross.
Ugh.
Like really tight, really small. But like the way this is described, like it doesn't seem like it's open to the sky.
It's more like a
like somebody took a knife and stuck it through and then pulled it out and left like this really thin hole that went all the way through.
There's a word my brain is trying to say and I can't remember what it is.
Fissure?
A fissure. That's probably what I'm trying to think of. It is like a fissure.
I just read it.
Okay,
they
well,
marched into the fissure with
good
Trask.
job. Good job, Brandon. Explaining your own thing that you made up.
Crevasse?
Crevasse? Crevasse.
There is a difference, according to my
There's a difference?
According to my snowboarding uncle, there is a difference. Crevice is smaller, crevasse is larger.
Interesting.
So I guess the French accent implies.
Okay, well.
Magnificent.
Anyway, it's a crack in the that goes all the way through
face.
on there.
A cliff face, yeah. A crack in a cliff face.
So anyway, they get to the other side, like the chicken. Anyway.
I was about to make the I was literally inhaling to say, why did the humans cross the cliff?
Too slow. Just kidding.
You beat me.
I just said the chicken, so yours was a little better.
Yeah, but at the same time, I just love that our minds are on the exact same
said
wavelength.
Get to the other side, which is the exact wording of the joke.
Yeah.
I bet. Okay, tell us in the comments if you thought of the exact same thing. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Tried to get to the other side and get
I
kidnapped by a dwarf.
I bet you thought of it too. I just made the joke and I said it first. So
The punchline is to be kidnapped by a giant dwarf.
yes,
Which in itself is a bit of
which is another joke
Yeah.
that Thronus loves. So yeah, out there's a griffin, and on the griffin there's a dwarf, and the dwarf is like, "You have entered the territory of Thronus. Surrender."
Fun fact, the griffin's descriptor, standing taller than a horse, creature had the head, wings, and talons of an eagle attached to the body and rear legs of a lion. So, hippogriff, but with lion back half.
There we go.
That's what I get from that.
Cool. So yeah, and Trask levels his crossbow at the dwarf, and he's like, "Lower your weapon."
I've had a long night.
Unlikely, Trask growled. "I'm not half bad with this. Slide off the griffin and toward me." And then the dwarf says, "In the realm of Thronus, the magnificent, trespassers do not issue orders. If you lay down your arms and come quietly, you will not be harmed. Initially."
I forgot about the
Okay.
initially. Trask's like,
Well, anyway.
we're not taking
Yeah.
this crap. Open that mouth again and you'll eat a quarrel.
Trask doesn't play around.
No, he does not. He's throwing out some zingers.
He's pretty badass.
Fly away, little man. We
Yeah.
don't mean you or the giant any harm. We're just passing through.
And then down come the griffins, and they snatch up Trask, they snatch up Dugan, they snatch up Tanu. Mara is able to kind of
Mara's
her-
a freaking queen.
she's crazy.
I want
It took
more
like
Mara
3 griffins
to grab her.
in a row, and like coming in
Attacking-
at the same time.
Coordinated attack.
Yeah. So like if she dodges one, dodges the other, and then I think the third one finally gets her. It's pretty crazy.
The woman
She
is
just
like Simone
like
Biles over here.
she just acrobatically, yeah. I think she like does a hand cart or like a
She stabs one of them with a spear.
cartwheel. That's what it's called.
But like Gavin, like so we lose 3 right off the bat. We are
Yeah.
left with Mara, Gavin, Seth, and Kendra.
Gavin
Gavin-
acts quickly.
Tackles Kendra to dodge, grabs her, chucks her head first
He's
into
like,
the knapsack.
go into the knapsack.
He's
and
like,
she kind of
get
like,
in.
head first. Yeah.
And I mean, props to Kendra. She grabs the ladder on her way in and repositions
Yeah,
herself.
she manages not to
and
fall
does not
down.
go head first into the knapsack.
That would have been very bad. And then Warren's like, nice nosedive.
But also,
What's going on?
great recovery.
Poor Warren. He's just like, what's going on out there? The outside world.
I'm just thinking of his
Not
later
for long.
comments. I keep thinking of his later comments where he's like, being this injured makes me cranky. And I'm thinking of just him just being like this crotchety old man. Like, what are you whippersnappers doing up there?
He's like, I want to be up there. When I was your age, I used to be able to.
When I had an intact intestine, we didn't let griffins carry away our friends. No, we all became
all went-
acupuncturists.
Well, we can't all be acupuncturists. No,
Your great-grandfather had to be a cross-dresser.
What? Not to mention, I'll lose the farm.
That's the vibe I get.
Okay.
That's the vibe I get.
Interesting.
I don't know why. But him just being like, nice nosedive, I would have done it better.
And Kendra's like, well, we're being attacked by griffins.
And a dwarf.
They already carried off a couple of our friends.
Not great.
Yeah. And then Seth is trying to get into the knapsack, but a griffin slams into him and
Takes Gavin.
it takes Gavin.
So now we're
And-
down to just Mara, Seth, and Kendra's in the knapsack.
Yeah, and then Mara gets taken. And then Seth, very smartly, tells Mendigo to take the knapsack because he knows he's like not gonna be able to get into it in time. And he's like, we can't let the knapsack get taken too.
Because
And
Kendra's
so-
in there and
yeah.
Warren's in
And
there.
so he commands Mendigo to take
and
the
also
knapsack
Bubda.
and Bubda. Can't forget Bubda.
Can't forget Bubda.
Bubda's important. And to get away with the knapsack, and so Mendigo takes it, jumps off the cliff into the ravine, and yeah, and Seth gets snatched up and taken with all the others. So yeah,
Loki, Mendigo, ride or die.
I know he's like snatches it, yeets himself off the cliff. Like holy crap! I mean, he's just following orders. He doesn't think about it. He's just a wooden puppet.
Yeah, you're right. And unfortunately, we find out that Seth gets grabbed, and then so Mendigo, what he does is he stashes the knapsack in a little tiny
Crevice.
Yes, this one's a crevice. This is not a crevasse. In the cliff wall after he lands, and it's nearly like broken in half because it's a hard landing, and he is still wood. If only we brought
his
Hugo.
arm breaks off.
Yeah, if only we brought Hugo. Honestly, Hugo
would Hugo go splat at the bottom of the canyon?
Would you go splat or would you go crish?
I mean, I bet a lot of his dirt and mud would like splatter a little bit.
I guess it depends if he's been like magically reinforced lately.
I feel like he has rocks underneath, but I don't know.
And like, well, maybe the rocks might be pulverized. I mean, if you drop a rock from a high enough point,
I think it's better that Mendigo jumped off the cliff than Hugo.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. He's also probably lighter because he is wood.
Yeah.
Instead of just a combination of rocks and sand and stone.
More aerodynamic.
He's a bit more. Well, there's probably a bit more wind resistance.
Yeah.
Like a piece of wood falling versus a rock falling, I feel like it would be a little bit better for the wood when it hits the ground.
I mean, they fall at the same speed.
But also,
Velocity.
I can't see.
I don't remember
Hugo,
much from my physical science class, but I remember that much.
But at the same time, I also can't see Hugo being taken out by a couple pesky griffins.
I don't think they could carry him.
That's what I'm saying. I think he's just punching
but then
a few and they're flying
Hugo,
away.
how did Hugo? I guess he could. Anyway.
So
Yeah.
So, yeah, literally only Kendra and Warren are now not captured by Thronus's griffins.
Yeah. But Warren is still he only got gored yesterday. Like, the man has not had
he's
time
still
to
out for the
recover.
count. Yeah, so really it's just Kendra and Bubda.
Yep. So.
But yeah, so.
And Kendra sees, she like pokes her head a little bit out of the knapsack, and she sees that they're in like the crevice. And she sees the griffins, and they take Mendigo, and they're trying to get the knapsack, but it's just far enough that like they can't reach, and so then they fly off. And she's like, okay, well, what do I do now? I can't, it's a very small little crevice. I don't know, there's not
Kendra as a 14-year-old girl can't get out into this little opening.
It's too narrow.
It's too narrow.
Yeah. And so she's like, well, we're kind of stuck. Kind of want to move it because just in case the griffins come back with the dwarf might be able to come in and get it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, well,
So,
we're
good
safe
news,
for now.
We're not imprisoned by the giant. Bad news, we're imprisoned by this stupid piece of rock.
We can't move. So, yeah.
All right, so now we're moving on to chapter 21, a giant problem. Ha. Ha. Ha.
It's just giant problem.
Eh. Like the way
It's very
said,
clever.
It's very, very clever.
Very clever.
Brandon. We see what you did there.
He was like, I'm so excited to use this.
Yeah, next one's gonna be called Dragon Problem. No, it's not, but you get my point.
Draconic problem.
Draconic, yeah. All right, so we still have the dwarf being the throne, being the dwarf is the giant's hype man, basically, where he's like, "You are now utterly at the mercy of Thronus and his minions."
Yeah.
I don't know why. I
like
think he has his high voice.
The little chipmunk voice.
Like I know, like most dwarves are
dwarfs.
like they have the dark deep
They're
voices,
of the earth or whatever.
but at the same
Like
time,
Thorin,
like,
son of Thrain, son
Yes.
of Thror.
but at the
king
same
under the
time, like
Yeah. I mean,
chipmunk voice,
a giant, a dwarf.
The giant's voice is going to be reverberating much more than the dwarf's.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're commanded to lay down their weapons. Trask is like, well, what choice do we have? So he's like, everybody throw it.
Yeah.
Throw it in the pot.
They have
so,
to surrender. And then out comes Thronus.
First Dugan gets a good zinger.
Oh.
The dwarf is being very smug and like, there is no shame in submitting to a pride of griffins or the cunning dwarf who leads them. You better not tell us your throne is Dugan groaned.
Dugan's like, that would make my day even worse, which
Like,
is hard to do.
Don't do this to me, please.
Her
I
tell us
can't
your
take it.
Thronus. Yeah.
And then the dwarf is just like, no, he'll come when it suits him. It suits me now.
Yeah, the big booming voice of the giant.
As it like the giant door that's giant door. Like that's
Ah.
I'm gonna bet because we get some scale here. Seth
Yeah.
is not half as tall as the giant's shins. So.
And it says several times bigger than the fog giants at Fablehaven.
Yeah,
and he's seen a fog giant.
He's
and
seen
they're pretty
fog
big.
giant. So if Seth is about at the shins.
Not half as tall.
Oh, he's not half as tall. So would you say like maybe like below the foot? Ankle height?
Maybe ankle, yeah.
So
Somewhere around there.
maybe 12 times as tall as a man?
Something like
That's
that.
what I'm going to go with 60 feet. I'm going to go with 60 to 80 feet tall. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, let's go with that.
All
Somewhere
right.
around there.
So, yeah, they're in front of, like...
A giant. Let's go.
they're
There
in front
is
of
a sky giant for
and
a
his,
reason.
like, palace is right behind them, which is to scale. Just for
yeah,
clarification.
everything is to scale.
So, interestingly enough, even the giant, which Seth comments on, because he's not, like, out of proportion.
Yeah, he just says he's not like an ogre, like ugly or anything. It's just like a man who's
Big.
enormous.
He's just a big man.
The BFG.
Except this one's
Except not friendly.
not friendly. Well,
Later, man.
he's
Little bit.
amicable. Also, Mendigo does get snatched up and brought to Thronos's
Yes.
doorstep. And interestingly enough, like his torso was so busted that he actually came apart, splitting into two halves. And like, so
Frick.
he's like in like 2 or 3 pieces at this point.
That's really bad.
That's not good. If we have to fight our way out. No
Yeah.
bueno. So Thronos is like, well, entertain me or else you're going to be baked into a pie.
Yep.
Cliche much.
Yeah.
Giants biking some people into a pie. Come on. Which nursery rhyme? How many of them have that?
E5.
Oh, fum.
And it also makes me think of like the trolls from, again, The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is pretty cliche. Like,
Just
why do
a
they?
simple-
Why can't you be a vegetarian, bro? For humans, why do you?
Well, then
why do
there
you
wouldn't
gotta
be
eat the humans?
There wouldn't be a threat now. Like, we need some kind of threat. It's just the
Exactly.
fact that it says bake into a
I
pie
mean,
specifically.
he could just squash you.
So they're all escorted inside, and Thronos is just like, I like this part. On the wall of inside the giant house is hung, hang on, here we go. A gargantuan suit of plate armor the size of Thronos stood in one corner. On the wall beside the armor hung a shield, a spear, a spiked mace, and a sheathed sword, all on a scale to be wielded by the giant. That's
Wow.
terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like redwood tree, like spear shaft.
Pretty much.
Because both height-wise and circumference, like, that's terrifying.
So yeah, basically, he's like, tell me who you are and why you're here. Because he's like, you better have a good reason for coming into my territory, you know?
He's honestly low-key kind of... He's practically jolly. He's just like, this is just like another Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like, you interrupted my Monday Night Football game, and I'm slightly annoyed, but I'm honestly more interested, because this doesn't happen very often.
But at the same time, he's not playing.
And he's also looking forward to a human meat pie at the very end of this. So
Yeah.
he's like, this isn't like a huge lose for me. I've already gotten all of you. Like, there's nothing you can do. I might as well be a little bit entertained by this. So who's in charge? What are you doing here? Oh. Key to prison, you say? Not that fascinating. And Seth's like, what? I speak Gigante, which,
Yeah.
great name for a giant language is Gigante.
Gigantic. Giant.
Gigant.
Gianty. Yeah.
Gigant. I see. Is it Gigante in the books?
Gigante. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, you're slightly more interesting. Which one of your companions do you think is most attractive? Like,
That
where
was
is
so
that
weird.
jump? Like, Thronos seriously asks Seth who he thinks the most attractive person in the party
And
is.
he's like, well, there's only one woman, so I guess it's Mara. And then he's like, okay. And he picks up Mara and he's like, tell me exactly why you're here, or else I'm gonna crush her skull
Yeah,
and
something like
a
that.
pea. I'm like, okay, what the frick? So yeah, Seth is like, okay, I'll tell you. So he does.
We're
'cause,
going
you
to the
know,
Dragon Temple.
Yeah, he's like, I either have to, like we were saying earlier, he either has to tell or they're all gonna die. And so Seth is like, well, I'd rather us all have a chance of living. Ice Age just popped into my head where Sid is like, no thanks, I choose life.
No thanks,
I choose life. Basically. He's like, no thanks, I choose life. I will tell you why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like, even tried to, like, barter with all their abilities. Like, Tanu is a potion master. Mara can tame wild animals.
yeah.
Dragon tamers. Gavin's a pro. We could be useful. And he even, like, says, hey, we could replace the dwarf. And the giant's like, but then I'd lose the pun. Like, I'd lose the giant's dwarf joke. And that just, the giant's shadow charmer just doesn't have the same ring to it. Sorry. Pass. But yeah, so
That's the only thing that interests me, so.
So, interestingly enough, when he picks up Mara, he recognizes her as Hopi.
I noticed that too, and I was like, huh. Why do you know that?
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I guess he's in Montana, which isn't super far away from Arizona, especially with his strides.
Just walking around.
I mean, yeah. But this comment also is wild. When he's, like, talking with Mara, he's like, not one for conversation, I gather, when she's ignoring him. Am I not wild beast enough for you to tame?
Okay, bro, go find yourself a giant wife or something. Like,
Yeah, we need you to calm down.
Relax here, dude.
So, yeah. He is sufficiently intrigued by the concept of helping them break into the Dragon Temple, because he's like, I'm down to poke the dragon a little bit. It could be entertaining.
And it's because there are some things that he is, like, interested in getting from there. So.
Because he does do some exposition about the dragon temples.
Yeah.
Because there are only 3 dragon temples, one in each of the forbidden sanctuaries. And each one has what's called Sage's Gauntlets, which can be used by wizards to control all dragons.
Yeah, those are at Wormroost.
But, like, besides that, like, all of the dragons kind of, like, pooled their...
There's a horde.
Like, they pooled their hordes. So it's not just one dragon's horde. It's a bunch of dragons' hordes.
Yeah, it's like their riches that they're all protecting.
Mm-hmm. And there are 3 guardians. There's only rumors about the first one, which implies that nobody even got, like, nobody got far in, like, even if they just went to the first guardian, they didn't come back out to tell what was in there.
Yep.
Much less to the second and third. Nobody even got past the first, and nobody lived to tell about it, because it's just rumors at this point.
Yeah.
How in the heck did Patton get the key in there?
Oh, and that's what Thronus says. He's like, oh, so you say there's a key, but I can't imagine anyone could ever get past them. And he's like, which human did it? And Seth is like, oh, Patton Burgess. And Thronus is like, I don't really pay attention to any humans, but that is one name that I do know.
I heard
which is impressive.
Like, come on, Patton.
And he's like, I'm still not sure if I believe that he could have done it, but okay. I'll humor you. I don't freaking know.
How does he do it? Because, like, the fact that the Guardians are still there implies that he did not kill them. So he had to have snuck past them. How?
I hope Brandon has an explanation, because, like, what?
I honestly wonder if it's similar to his method for getting rid of Ranticus.
I was wondering that, too.
At, like, the Lost Mesa Preserve?
Disguise.
Because, like, all of the dragons
has to be.
All of the Guardians have to be fed.
Yeah.
There's 3 Guardians, and they have to be fed, so there's got to be some way for them to get sustenance, theoretically. In which case,
like, why didn't he write that on the tombstone? This is how I snuck past.
Or
he's like, no, you have to do it the hard way.
Or at least on the stone that he chucks into the fairy queen's pond.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, only Kendra can get that.
I mean, only Kendra could read the tombstone stuff anyway, too.
Yeah,
so.
But at the very least, like, only Kendra can get to that, because only the fairy queen won't let her get to it, and won't let anybody else.
That's true. Come on, Patton.
That was kind of rude.
He's like, I'm doing so much already.
He's like,
I want to see if you can do it. I don't know. Like, why?
Like, come
what
on. You
is
gotta
the reason?
prove that you're my great-great-grandkids. You gotta prove it.
I feel like Seth, even though it doesn't mention, he's probably a little proud of, like, that Thronus knows who Patton is. He's like, that's like that blood is running through my veins. Like my third great uncle, granduncle, whatever. Still working on that.
We're still working on that family tree. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So Thronus is like, all right, there's some things in that horde that I'm also interested in.
Uh-huh.
So I'll sponsor you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll equip you. I'll transport you. I want to see how far this goes. Because he's also confident enough that even if he, like, supports them getting in, he's like, I'm powerful enough that the dragons aren't going to be able to really come at me. Like, I wouldn't mind some objects from in there, but even without them, I can hold my own against them.
Yeah.
He's like, and also this way, I get to piss them off.
He gets to stir up a little trouble without actually doing it. So he wants these specific figurines. He says, I have not ignored the Dragon Temple for lack of interest. There's nothing inside to tempt me to risk all, yet there are a few items I would like. Precious figurines, a set kept together, a dragon worked in red stone, a snow giant crafted from white marble, a jade chimera. There are 2 other pieces to the set, an onyx tower and an agate leviathan. Bring those as well. Yes, bring all 5 figurines, and perhaps you will glimpse my generous side. So yeah, he's basically just be like, okay, go steal this stuff from me, and then I'll let you live.
Most likely. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, but also he talks about the choker thing, like, around his neck.
Which Agate did mention.
Yes.
He's like, I gave him his biggest weakness when he was talking to Kendra. A choker that makes it so he can never lie.
Which is very handy.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's like, I have to be honest in my dealings with you because of this, so you're going to have to too.
It's only fair.
Yeah, he's like, I've tinkered around and created similar things for people of your size, so you will all wear these chokers until you deliver these figurines to me so that I can be guaranteed that you will keep your end of the bargain.
Yeah, I mean, like, because even if they're wearing the chokers and they say, okay, we will do our best to get these for you, if they say, well, maybe we can deliver them later, they're done. And it's not just like it'll kill them by magic. No, it will strangle them to death.
Yep. So.
No thanks.
Woohoo. I mean, that's what they have to do to live, so they have to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Also,
that's the last stipulation.
Yeah. But he also says, okay, in case you're wondering, this is what you're trading. I mean, not that they're, like, considering not doing this because this is literally their best hope for any survival.
Yeah.
He's like, if I am to surrender my pie, I want some hope of a return on my investment. I can give you a dose or 2 of precious dragon's bane, which we'll know from Patton is the only poison that can kill a dragon.
Yeah, because they can't smell it.
They can't smell it, and it's powerful enough to kill them. Maybe a sword edged with adamant or a spear tipped with the same. Rare items that I would rather not lose, to be sure, but what good is a hoard of objects never used? So he's willing to help him out a bit. He's like, I really want to see how far you go.
He's going to be their sponsor, but they're going to do his bidding. So, yeah.
I also love that Seth's been doing this entire negotiation, even though the first thing that Thronus asked was who's your leader, and Trask came forward. And then at the very end of the negotiation, Thronus looks back down. He's like, oh, yeah, how do you feel about this, sir leader? And Trask is like, yeah, I'm good.
Thumbs up. We're not dying. Oh, but something we forgot to mention is that Thronus was like, first of all, if you weren't so young, I would think you were a shadow charmer. And then Seth's like, well, you can trust those instincts because I am. And then later Thronus is like, how do I know if I can trust you? You're a shadow charmer. And Seth is like, I swear I'm not evil.
I'm 13, people.
Yeah. So that was
really
interesting.
The shadow charmers of the past have really screwed Seth over in terms of credibility. He's got nothing.
He's working really hard with that. So, okay.
Whereas we have Kendra, on the other hand, where the second people hear her name, they're like fawning over, and she's like, what did I do?
She's like, I have not done that much comparatively to this praise yet.
So, yeah. And it's like, literally, we have light and dark, and we have, with their reception, both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting.
We like that.
All right.
Okay.
So now we get to chapter 22.
We're doing so much better than last time.
I love this chapter because it introduces one of my favorite characters.
Who is the name of the chapter himself?
Raxtus.
We love this one.
I love Raxtus
We
so
love Raxtus so
much. I've been waiting to talk about Raxtus for so long. So it opens, and they're trying to convince Bubda to go out and move the knapsack because only he is small enough to be able to fit in there and move the knapsack. And he's like, ask me next week.
I really wonder how early, like, was Bubda in the original draft, or was he kind of like a, oh crud, I got them into this like
how do I get
very
out of this
difficult
crevasse?
situation. Crevice. No, we established this one was a crevice.
Sorry, crevice. My emphasis was wrong.
So yeah. So he's like, well, in order to get away from the Griffins, I'm gonna have Mendigo jump off a cliff. But in order to not get Mendigo, like to get the knapsack away, I'm gonna have him shove him in this crevice. But once I get in the crevice,
how do they get out again?
The crevice goes back 10 chapters.
We need
Seth
a little
meets
troll.
a little hermit troll inside.
Seth makes a friend. So yeah, who loves Yahtzee. And so to convince him,
because he's very reluctant.
Yeah, they make a little bet, and they're like, "Hey, if we beat you in Yahtzee, you have to go move the knapsack." And Bubba's like, "Yahtzee? Let's do it! I can't lose. I'm the champion of Yahtzee." So they play, and well, the odds are in their favor because they win.
Yeah, that's fair. Did it say? Wasn't there a? Oh, I guess there wasn't a stipulation. I was like, yeah, is it really fair that they get a 2-to-1 chance that they'll win?
Bub does so cocky.
He's confident. That's fair.
Yeah, he's confident in his abilities to win Yahtzee.
Mm-hmm. And I love Kendra just being like, we're putting our fates into the hands of these this little plastic cup and 2 red worn die. Why not? Nice. It's hardly the craziest thing we've heard this week.
Yeah, it's not the craziest way they've gambled their lives. But there is a cute little snippet where she's like, it reminds me of when I was younger and we would play Yahtzee with our grandma and grandpa Larson for hours.
Not Sorensen, noted.
Yeah. The grandparents that they grew up with. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of a cute memory, you know?
Yeah.
Sitting around the table playing games with your family.
And of course, the grandma wins the most.
Yeah.
Because, of course, grandma always wins.
Grandma always wins.
Do you have one of those games that you'd play with your like family or grandparents?
We would always play, well, depends on my dad's side, we would always play Phase 10.
We play that one a lot too.
Yeah. And then growing up, I didn't play because I kind of hate the game, but most of my family likes it. It was more with like, I don't know if my grandpa really liked it. Mm-hmm. The farming game.
I don't know.
You ever heard of that? I don't know why we do, but my family freaking loves it. And they play certain rules. There's certain rules where I think you have to play like a certain amount of like rounds. It has a board kind of like Monopoly where it's like different like spaces. And you buy a farm and you buy crops, and then you sometimes get a thing where like, oh, your crops fail, and like you get money for selling the crops.
The OG Settlers of Catan.
I guess so. That's one way to look at it.
That's what it feels like.
It's similar to that, but it's funny because my family played a certain way that they earned so much money that they had to make more money for the game. So they like wrote on like notebook paper, like they cut it up and like wrote like bigger bills so that they could play longer. But it just I'm the kind of person where like I can only play a game for so long and then I get sick of it.
That's fair.
Like sometimes, like whenever I started playing a game with Risk with my family, I regret it because it takes so long. Or Monopoly, I hate Monopoly because it takes so long. And
doesn't Settlers of Catan take forever?
Not as long as like Risk or
I don't think I've ever played through
a
full game of Settlers of Catan.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it could take a while, but I don't think it takes more than like 2 hours. Have you ever played a game of Risk?
Yes.
It can take like 12 hours.
That one's fun though.
Oh, but it's so annoying.
So fun.
Okay, wait. What version of Risk do you play? We have
normal one.
The Lord of the Rings.
We do not have Lord of the Rings. Hey, you know what I do have now though? What I got for Christmas? I have Harry Potter Monopoly.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I will not be playing
that. I know
because
you
I hate
you
Monopoly.
Just said it. You just said that.
I just said I hate Monopoly. It's so freaking annoying.
But it's Harry Potter themed.
It's fun to look
Harry
at.
Potter themed.
I just can't. I do like Settlers of Catan though.
I did actually just get a set of Settlers of Catan as well for Christmas.
Nice. I've not played in a long time.
There was a sale at the game store when my parents went.
I've not played in a long time. So what games did you play with your family? Like with your grandparents? Those are like the ones I played with like my grandparents.
Phase 10 and then Hand and Foot.
Hand and Foot. What is that?
So that one, it's like a face card game.
Okay.
Where basically what you do is you have to have one more deck in like like if you have like you have to have one more deck of cards than the number of people playing. So if you have like 4 people playing, you need 5 total decks of cards that all get shuffled into a singular deck. Is it like Scum? Maybe. And then like everybody gets like a hand of cards, and they need to try to create as many books as they possibly can.
Okay, no, it's not.
And the books have to be composed of all the same number. You can
like
sets.
Like in Phase 10, like sets.
Yes, but it would all be the same number, which you can do because there are so many decks in the deck. So yeah, that was the
never heard of that one.
That was the grandma game. Like she had, like at her house, she has like different bags of sets ready to go. Like she'll have, man. She's like, okay, this is my bag of cards
3 players, 4 players, 5 players. I get it.
Each of them have more and more decks of cards in there.
That's fun.
That's grandma's house. That's fun. It's grandma to me.
Man.
That and Phase 10 are the 2.
I wonder how many other people Phase 10 is like their like family. Like I literally grew up playing with that.
Phase 10 is very popular.
It's pretty classic.
It's easy to understand.
I like there's like different variations, like similar, like Phase 10, 5 Crowns is similar. I've heard Rummy is like kind of what it's based off, you know.
Rummy Cube, I've heard that one. I remember it was outside of we were outside waiting to go in for a basketball game in college, and I was with my little sister and a bunch of her friends, and it was freezing outside because it was January. I don't know why I decided to go. But we're just sitting out.
To wait in line.
I don't know. I was crazy. We got really good seats though. It was really nice.
Yeah, that's.
But we were sitting there, and we decided to play. Somebody brought out a game of Phase 10, we're just sitting there in line, like outside of this huge sports center, playing Phase 10. And I swear to you, there were people on Phase 8. I was still on Phase 1. I swear to you, I had never had such bad luck in Phase 10 before, but I swear to you, Phase 8, I was still on Phase 1.
That's insane.
It was, I seriously would turn to the person next to me, and I would just beg, and I was like,
you're sitting there for
please
7
just
rounds.
give me a 6. There were times I'd be so close, but somebody would just lay down in like a heartbeat.
And you're like, well.
I had nothing, there was nothing I could do.
That sucks.
It was a horrible, horrible game. Oh my gosh. And also I was freezing, so it didn't make it any better.
Oh man.
So yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, that was, I think, as far as I've ever gotten without
the worst game of Phase 10 in your life.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody get worse than that.
I've never seen anyone get stuck on, especially the first one, which is the easiest one for so long. Theoretically, yeah. And these weird set of circumstances that you ended up in, somehow it wasn't easy.
Yeah. As someone who's taken a couple stats classes at this point, the probability of such an outcome was
very
astronomical.
Low. Yeah.
All right. So, continuing on.
Fun family game
Yahtzee.
Night.
We love it.
Yeah.
I've never actually played Yahtzee, but we'll talk about it.
Yahtzee?
Yeah, never really. All right. Continuing on, we have...
he loses, takes
Bubda
out the
loses.
knapsack, and then Kendra goes out, and she's like, okay, well, what do I do?
Also, low-key, though, because the only reason Bubda can get out is because Kendra's like, it looks small even for him, who is a hermit troll, which is like the smallest kind of troll there is.
Yeah.
Apparently, because he has some magics.
Yeah.
Like he can,
like he makes himself look like a cask or a barrel.
Yep.
Like,
but he can also, when Kendra's like, how did you do that so fast? Grinning, Bubda raised one arm, cocked his head, and began to dance in place. For a moment, as he turned and swayed, he looked as slender and flexible as a serpent, his body almost elastic. Then he dropped his arm again, and the illusion ended. Play Yahtzee again. But I
never noticed that as like a...
I don't know why, but my brain kind of puts like...
him being able to like shapeshift a little?
Like Snake Charmer music over that. Like,
oh my
with
gosh.
Like, he's like...
The stereotypical whatever.
But it's like the way it says like he swayed, turned elastic, and is flexible as a serpent, and it's just like I don't know why my brain just does like that, like
yeah, the stereotype Aladdin type stuff.
Arabian Nights, that's what my brain goes to.
Interesting.
So
yeah, Kendra's out and she kind of looks around. She sees the big part of Mendigo that broke off, and she like picks it up and is like, okay, I guess I'll take this with me.
Can't hurt. We have a 3D like storage space that doesn't get heavier or lighter. Just throw it in there.
Might as well. I could take a splinter of wood. Yeah, after she picks up the wood, it kind of all hits her, and she's like, my friends could be dead. My brother could be dead. She, like, pictures them being, fed to baby griffins and torn apart and whatever, and she's there alone with Warren, who's injured and can't do anything, and, the world is on her shoulders right now.
Well, at least we're familiar with this situation.
That's true. This is not the first time she's had to deal with it.
And also not the first time we've had a slight emotional breakdown. Warranted, to be fair.
Very
Very warranted. I am not shaming her for breaking down. She deserves it. She's earned it at this point.
She deserves a cry.
But I'm just comparing this to book 1 when post Bahamut and Muriel, Kendra escapes because she hasn't done any magic and goes to the Fairy Queen's pond and just breaks down on the island, just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Please help me.
Mm-hmm.
And this time she doesn't even have somebody to cry to. She's just like, I'm done. What's the point?
Yeah.
Again, we're getting back to it. What's the point? Why am I here? Why am I trying to do this when there's no point of me trying at this point? The answer?
Well,
because we have another magical person coming to meet you.
Yeah. Well, she picks herself up a little.
She does.
Goes back to Warren and says, okay, I don't see anything, but I think I'm going to try and see if there's a way to get out of the gorge. And he's like, okay, well, don't go scaling any cliffs.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, okay, I won't. And also he's playing Yahtzee with Bubda.
Yep. And
so she goes back out and starts to walk, trying to find the end of the gorge, see if there's a way out.
Which there is not.
Yeah, and the second she sees that there's not, again, starts to break it down.
Again, warranted.
Oh, yeah. And then, well...
Don't cry.
Yeah, a voice from behind. I love it says, a kind voice from behind her.
Don't cry.
Oh. First she's like, what the frick? Well, first of all, she's like, oh, what the heck?
Well, not even that. She whirls around and she's staring at a dragon.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So, yeah, we have met Raxtus. Descriptors, it was the smallest dragon she had ever seen, with a body the size of a large horse, although the long neck and tail added greatly to its length. Its gleaming armor of silvery white scales reflected a glimmering rainbow sheen, and the head was bright as polished chrome. Overall, the dragon had a lean, sleek build, as if designed for speed. Strangely, Kendra realized that she felt none of the paralysis she had experienced when confronted by other dragons. Don't worry, the dragon said. I won't eat you. He had a male voice, somewhat like a confident teenager, but the words came out richer and fuller than any human.
I feel like I have to rephrase how you said that.
Sorry.
Don't worry, I won't eat you. It's more like, don't worry, I won't eat you.
No,
That's what she said.
No,
okay.
you're totally right. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, he does say like a confident teenager.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, I won't eat you.
Yeah. And Kendra's like, well, I actually don't feel scared for some reason. And Raxtus, he's like, I've never inspired much terror. Like, oh.
I'm glad you're not afraid, but
he's like story of my life. Yeah, the first thing we really learned about Raxtus is that
he's not like other dragons.
He's not like other dragons, and he hates it, but he's like, well, whatever. So basically, his story is that when he was an egg, there was a cockatrice that attacked the nest where he and his siblings are at, and all of his other siblings were eaten and killed.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saved by some fairies. And through being saved by fairies, they used their fairy magic and changed his nature enough that he is different from any other dragon. First of all,
he's very touched.
He's very struck. A dragon that was very struck, basically. Not very struck specifically, but
we've been talking about
that's
very struck,
what we're saying.
dragon struck, dragon kind. Now we're having
he's not like technically,
dragon,
but yeah,
dragon fairy.
Anyway, and so he has different powers. Like he's very connected to the Fairy Queen. He kind of calls her his and some of the fairies like his surrogate mother, basically. And
by the way, I just looked up cockatrice because I was like, I don't know, because
I don't know what that is.
You know what a chimera is. You know what a basilisk is.
So what is it?
So basically, the first dictionary entry: cockatrice is a mythical beast, essentially a two-legged dragon, wyvern, or serpent-like creature with a rooster's head.
I can't really picture that, but okay.
That's what I got. Allegedly, they are created by a chicken egg hatched by a toad or snake, which I thought was a basilisk.
Sounds like a basilisk, yeah.
So basically,
well, no,
they just really didn't want...
The roosters kill the basilisk, right?
The cry of the rooster is fatal to the basilisk.
That's why she kills the chickens. Talking about
spiders flee.
We are talking about
Chamber of
Secrets. I was going to say Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. they both have secrets in it, so I was confused in my brain.
Spiders flee before it.
It all fits. Hermione's done that too. Pipes. He's going through the plumbing.
That's why I hear it in the walls.
Kill. Why are you so freaking good at that? It's so creepy. Okay, I don't know if I'll keep this in, but a couple of weeks ago, I was editing the episode where we kept
the original Chamber of
where
Secrets.
we kept quoting the Chamber of Secrets, and Jessica does her little parcel tongue bit, and it was like dark at like 11 p.m. and I hear whatever the frick she said it. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was creepy. It's dark. It's late. That freaked me out a little bit, how good that was. So, yeah.
She proceeds to immediately send me the video, just being like, Jessica.
You just freaked me out. Just a little bit. I was like, that was a little creepy how good you're at.
I died laughing.
It was insane. So anyway.
I have some skill with
mimicry,
were you apparently.
With this? Oh, yeah.
The cockatrice.
The cockatrice. So basically, Raxus isn't like other dragons. He's a lot smaller. His breath weapon isn't a weapon. It makes things grow.
And possibly heals.
And possibly heals.
Though that kind of misfires when we try it on Warren.
Yeah. So, and he has like no confidence in himself because he's like, my father, who is, celebrant, like the king of the dragons. You like...
Not just King of Dragons in Wormroost, to be fair. We're talking about...
Capital K.
Capital K.
King.
Of all dragons, capital D.
Yeah. He's like, well, I'm a disappointment, but he kind of feels guilty that he wasn't there to save me and my siblings, so...
After, quote, his mom got herself killed, so that's interesting.
Yeah. Basically...
Kind of want that story.
Raxus is, like, trauma dumping to Kendra, and he's like, sorry, I don't mean to do this, but this is, like, my life story, so... And Raxus has no confidence in himself. He's like, I am just a disappointment to everyone. I'm not like the dragon that I ought to be. Anyway, this is Raxus and his personality. He doesn't have confidence in himself. But he's the sweetest, and we love him.
The worst part is that, like, the extra insult to injury is that Raxus is literally a miniature celebrant.
Yeah, he looks like him with the shiny scales.
Which is really interesting to hear about. Like, now we have some idea of what celebrant looks like. It's just a giant version of Raxus, built for speed, not strength, which is interesting.
Yeah.
With platinum scales and, cunning,
so,
noble, just apparently to his epithet.
And another thing that Raxus could do is that he can go pretty much invisible. So he was like, he noticed Kendra and their group the minute that they came into the sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And he's been like kind of following them, and he's like, I wanted to help you, but like I just couldn't.
That self-confidence.
Yeah, he just did not have the confidence to reveal himself.
It's in Tartarus.
And so, yeah. The second Kendra started crying when she was like, I can't get out of here, he's like, okay, I have to do something now.
There's no other dragons, no griffins.
No griffins.
We're good to make contact.
He even knows people's names. Yeah. He knows Seth's name. He knows Warren's name. Like, he's been right there listening, eavesdropping, but just like, he's like too shy to go try and help and insert himself, but he finally does it.
He's like embarrassment from Inside Out too. Just he always has his hoodie up.
He's like, I'm sorry, I am the way that I am.
And he feels so bad too. He's like, I know I should have helped. Like I could have taken the Griffins, but there were a lot of them, and I knew who they worked for. And then by the time I psyched myself up, my moment was gone. I'm just like, baby.
It's just like the anxiety take over.
You're 300 years old, but I don't care. You're a baby.
Yeah. I think he's more than 300 years old.
It says centuries.
Well, he hasn't grown in centuries.
Oh, you're right. And they start slowing down growth after a
Yeah.
couple first centuries.
Also,
Okay.
spoilers, he knows Bracken, and Bracken has been in prison for a while. So
Oh, you right.
he's pretty old.
Nice poll. That was a good one.
Yeah. So yeah, also another interesting thing is that he says that he can travel using the fairy shrines because he's connected to like the fairy queen and everything.
He doesn't because he doesn't go into the fairy realm. Like,
well, he kind of does. Like, he kind of uses it as like a waypoint.
Yeah, I guess. But he can't transport passengers, unfortunately. Kendra got real excited for a second. She's like, "Can you take me to Fablehaven?"
Well, also the shrine there is gone,
and that's the main reason.
Yeah,
or the other reason.
He says, "Oh, I know a fairy at Fablehaven. He knows Shiara."
It's a small world after all. It's a small... But at the same time, of all the fairies who would stave a little dragon egg, Shiara seems like...
Yeah, and Kendra's like, she's like the most useful fairy at Fablehaven. He's like, well, you don't have to lay it on so thick. And she's like, no,
seriously.
Actually, she is awesome.
Honestly, Raxtus, he has, like... anything anybody says, he immediately takes it to be like, oh, you're just trying to... make me feel better. You're trying to exaggerate.
His whole life has been either being bullied by other dragons or probably being pitied. And so that kind of sucks for, a dragon, dragons are like the top predator.
Yeah, top of the food chain.
Yeah, and he just lives his life, but no one does anything because he's the king's son, so they don't do anything against him, so he just has a odd existence.
But even like the king doesn't like him, so
exactly
they can say and whatever they want, they just can't hurt him.
I love how he's like, oh, I don't have to stay in Warm Roost because I didn't agree to the treaty, I just traveled here. And he's like, I really like driving movies. Like, he just, it's kind of a useful skill. He can go pretty much wherever there's a shrine and then go invisible, so he can kind of do whatever he wants.
Honestly,
which he does.
Kind of OP.
Yeah.
Raxus is low-key OP.
OP, but he doesn't appreciate it because he doesn't have the self-confidence to use it.
Anyway, now you know my sorry background. The full confession. I don't want to be feeble and useless. I'm not proud of it. I love action movies. My fondest dream is to be a hero. To be fierce and brave. To somehow prove myself a real dragon. But when the opportunity arises, I cringe.
Oh, Raxus.
Like when the griffins took your friends. I could have charged to the rescue. Come on, they were griffins. But there were a lot of them. I decided to lie low for a minute. And before I knew it, the opportunity had passed me by. Can I hug him?
That's what Kendra says. She's like, she wanted to give him a hug, but she thought that would prove his point. That's literally what she thinks.
What makes things even worse, he's so touched by fairy magic that when he finally managed to figure out how to create a human avatar, it wasn't human.
It's a little fairy boy.
It's a little fairy boy. Yeah. And it's not even small enough to pass as a fairy. It's a foot tall instead of like 3 inches.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, well, maybe if I could just turn into a human, I could be human for a while. And then he's like, well, that was taken from me too. So
poor boy.
Yeah, Raxus I freaking love him though.
He's so good.
He's so sweet.
I yearn to be a hero, but I'm a coward at heart. No,
Rax, you just need confidence. You just need confidence.
We'll get you some confidence, buddy. We got you.
It's okay. Raxus, like we said earlier, one of his abilities is like to make things grow and maybe heal. Maybe heal. So they're like, well, you want to try on Warren? And he's like, I guess it couldn't hurt.
Except his self-confidence when he fails.
Yeah, so Warren makes his way out. First of all, he just took some drugs because he is in a lot of pain.
He's a little loopy.
And he's a little loopy. And so they get him up out of the knapsack. And it is kind of funny how afterwards Raxus is like, you notice he wasn't even scared of me? Like, kind of proves his own point. So Raxus tries, and all it does is make Warren's hair grow.
Turn Warren into
it looks like a hobo. Yeah.
Some people are like tired drunk. Some people are funny drunks. Warren is a cranky drunk.
He is very cranky. He's like, are you kidding me?
He's got the drugs. He's on the anesthesia. So, and now he's just like, okay, I guess my breath feels kind of minty now.
Yeah, and then after he kind of bites Rex's head off a little bit, he's like, I'm sorry. I'm a little cranky. I'm going to go back to sleep now. And he, like, scoots himself back into the knapsack and goes down.
Because, I mean, he's still been impaled, guys.
He's still, yeah, that's why he was taking the drugs.
He had to go up the ladder and now back down.
And he's like, I think I popped some of my scabs. Like, did not. And Raxus
you can't blame him for being crazy.
Raxus is like, why do I even try? And Kendra's just trying to be like, no, you're okay. It's okay.
You're great.
You're good.
I like this point. You're not a freak, Kendra said firmly. You're the coolest looking dragon I've ever seen. The only dragons I've seen or heard of are harsh and mean. It's easy to be mean when you have sharp teeth and claws. It would be much harder to be likable. I've never even pictured a likable dragon until now.
That's such a good quote.
Like, it's easy to get mean to when you
have all the power, it's easy to be corrupted by it.
Yeah. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. It's so much harder to be kind, especially like when you've been mocked and belittled for centuries like Raxus.
Yeah.
He still chooses to be
He's
nice.
had kind of a bad life.
He had a great foster mom.
And among dragons.
Godmother.
Bad. Yeah, fairy godmother.
That's next. All right.
So yeah, she's like, well, eventually Kendra's like, well, can you take me to the shrine, please? And he's like, I can do that.
I got you.
I can fly, so I can at least do that.
He's like, that's the one thing I can do right.
Yeah. And do well. Mm-hmm. He does it really well.
Like, to the point where, like, Kendra's like, give me more, hit me, like, let's do some more loop-de-loops. But, like, when they finally get to the shrine and they come down, Raxus is so thoroughly, like, giving Kendra the experience. She's like, you have ruined roller coasters for me forever. Yeah. And I just love Raxus is like, aw, shucks.
He's like, well, I guess is the other thing I'm good at, so.
And I mean, let's go. Props to Kendra for being like, nah, I'll stay out of the knapsack on this one.
Yeah.
He just, like, because Raxus, he just grabs her around the waist with one of his talons and, like, flies with her. And she's like, and he gives her the option. He's like, if you want, you can go in the knapsack and I'll just carry you there. I'll let you know when it's safe. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, let's do it.
No, let's be a little bit like Seth and let's...
She's channeling a little bit of that Burgess. She got it in her.
She's still related to the Burgesses.
She just tempers it with reason.
Yeah, she's got a little more of the Sorensen, too.
Yeah. All right.
Or maybe it's just that she's a girl and girls' brains develop faster, and so she's not so stupid.
Low-key, though.
I think I'm right, honestly.
I think you are. I don't doubt you.
I mean,
think
look
right.
at all the Burgess men, and then Grandma never does anything dumb, does she?
No, she just take care of business with her crossbow.
She got her crossbow. She's fine.
All right. So we get to the shrine, and we meet some very interesting creatures.
Yes. This is not first. This is kind of our first interaction with the Astrids.
Yes, we have seen them briefly at Fablehaven during Book 3.
Book 3.
Grip of the Shadow Plague.
Yeah, when they're
also
all
trapped
at the pond.
They're trapped in the pond.
Yes.
But they just give Kendra kind of like an uneasy feeling because they're just staring.
They're like kind of like giant golden owls, basically with like human faces, right? Something like that.
Have you looked at the
weird
picture? There's a picture.
Yes,
in the book.
I've seen that picture. It's off-putting.
Yeah, but the human faces aren't as bad as you think.
Yeah,
like, the human faces could be much worse.
That's true.
Like, it has like tufts, like it has the human face shape, but it also has like the owl ears and like the feathers surrounding it, so it's not like just like human head on top of owl body.
That's true. It's more of a human face.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we get some backstory. There
Praxis
are
is like, all 12 of them are here.
There are 96 total in the world. Honestly, that makes me like surprised that nobody's tried to collect them. Like, if you think of like Maddox being a fairy broker, like when there's only 100 of them in an entire world, that I feel like that would make it a somewhat rare commodity.
Interesting.
Like supply and demand, low supply.
Yeah,
high
but
demand.
like, what would you do with a?
What are you gonna do with a fairy?
Fairy's the one that sings in the first one.
Yeah, I guess the
they
others, like,
help
make your
plants grow. They do a lot
Okay.
more. Astrids don't do anything.
Yeah, and they're not quite as pretty. Okay.
I honestly forgot about the Astrids. I was like, oh yeah, the Astrids.
Loki Astrid is like a good
Astrid,
name. I
toothless
Astrid.
We need her to like us. Thank you for nothing.
Sorry.
You useless
I'm
reptile.
sorry. Just get me off of this thing.
Just keep going back to How to Train Your
rough, but I'll
Dragon.
take it.
How to Train Your Dragon and Chamber of Secrets, apparently.
They're goated movies.
They are great.
Okay, so again, there are 96 in the world. There are 12 currently at Wormroost, and we've seen around 3 at Fablehaven.
Yeah.
So, I love this next comment. Raxus is like, wait, you don't know about the Astrids? You don't know about the whole,
You don't know the lore about
them?
Ooh.
And so Raxus is like, Kendra's like, they're one of just the many things I know nothing about.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I just assumed since you were, well, never mind. Since I was fairy kind, well, yeah, wasn't there an orientation? I wish. Like, I bet at this point, Kendra would have killed for an orientation about, because.
Okay, you're gonna go on your little rant again.
I'm getting on my
Jessica's
soapbox.
getting on her stinking little soapbox about Kendra. Okay, go ahead.
She has so
We listen
many...
and we don't judge.
She, like, time and time again, we're told about she has, like, all of these interesting powers and, like, authority and, like, things that we don't know of. Like, they're hinted at, but they're never followed through on. Like, even just Raxus here saying, oh, wasn't there an orientation?
Well, maybe that's the point.
Ah!
She doesn't know about all her powers because there wasn't an orientation.
I'm saying there should have been. Why couldn't the
I'll take that out with the Fairy Queen.
Like,
okay. Do you want to go into spoilers
No,
or no?
I'm not going to go any farther than that.
Okay.
But the fact that, like...
Because there are a lot of things I can say right now.
Every time
spoilers.
we get close, they dangle little tidbits of, like, ooh, cool Kendra stuff. Ooh, cool Kendra stuff. They dangle it in front of our faces, and then they snatch it away. Every time. She'll get, like, a new little interesting ability that opens up, like, a door into thinking, oh, whoa, that's really intriguing. I would love to learn more about that.
Like, for example.
Seeing in the dark. Being able to recharge magical objects.
She does that a lot.
She does, but it's not... And it takes
What's
forever
wrong
until
with that?
It takes forever for it to be explained why.
Why what?
Why she's able to do that. Like, oh, she's very kind, so... Yeah.
But why does it matter the why instead? You want action, though, so why does it matter about the why? I'm going to play devil's advocate here, okay?
Okay. When I was in Brandon Sanderson's class, he talked a lot about developing magic systems and about why...
This is a soft magic system.
This is a very soft magic system, but at the same time, like, your ability... I can't remember exactly how it's phrased, but it's like the audience will believe... How does he say it? He's like, you have to define your magic system in order for people to believe what you do with it.
Yeah.
Like, the more defined characteristics you have in your magic system, the more you can allow for creativity and interesting interpretations of said abilities in, like, later moments. And so we have Kendra being able to recharge magical objects. Super cool in that she can refill, like, Sands of Sanctity, and later on we have some stuff with the unicorn horn, all well and good, like that. But, like, things like this where she is seen, especially, like, with, like, her relationship with the fairies, where they are now subject to her whim, like, things like that. I want to know more.
Like, what?
Like, where she fits in, like, a hierarchy. Like, is she, like, a priestess to the fairy queen? Is she, like, it says she's a mortal handmaiden, but so are the fairies. The fairies are also handmaidens. So why does Kendra, as a handmaiden, be placed above the rest of the handmaidens?
Because she's been singled out by the fairy queen. Also, that's a very distinctive thing. She's different from the fairies because she's not a fairy. She's a mortal, and she was chosen by the fairy. She wasn't struck down by the fairy queen. The fairy queen saw her innocence and her love for her family and chose her to be very kind. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very important distinction that almost never happens. So that's why she's above the fairies.
I think it's also, like, we have evidence that there have been other fairy kind people before, and that, like, the Sphinx is able to diagnose her and, like,
yeah,
oh, you're able to do this and this. And I just, like, with Seth, we have, like, a set number of possible abilities that he could one day attain. Like when Graulus is first talking about his
not
ability,
like a set number, but we have some.
we have an
that are
idea
mentioned.
of what he could one day become.
Okay.
Like we have heard tales of shadow charmers who could dampen torches, unlock doors. Like,
but that takes practice.
it takes practice, but it's something to aspire to.
Okay, so you're
Whereas
mad that
Kendra,
fairy kind is not defined.
it's not as well defined, and so it kind of makes it easier for it to become a Deus Ex Machina.
Explain big words that you just said.
Deus Ex Machina, it's kind of like saying, oh, the writer's written themselves into a corner, so, like, I'm trying to think of a good example in pop culture.
So you're saying it's a problem because they could say whatever they want to fulfill the plot need?
Yes, that is the definition of a Deus Ex Machina.
Okay.
Because
it's not defined.
It is so vaguely defined, it kind of makes it harder for the audience to buy in. That is my
I
personal
buy
take.
into it, but...
Great. I'm glad it works for you. It doesn't
I think
quite
you've
work
been
for
reading
me.
too much freaking Brandon Sanderson.
Says the
I think that's your problem.
Says the one who is still trying to finish the book.
Hey, I'm not trying to compare the Brandons here. They are both good in their own right.
Well, okay. And you're right. I love Brandon Mull. I love Brandon Sanderson. And I'm not saying this as a comparison of Brandon Mull and Brandon Sanderson. I'm saying this as someone who has learned about... And I guess that does say something because Brandon Sanderson's style is a bit more hard magic system.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Brandon Sanderson is very much in this world. He knows exactly how it works, and he has like laws of science to describe it. But Brandon Mull doesn't work. Not every writer works that way, and just because they're not working that way doesn't mean it's lesser.
And I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying what I'm trying. I'm sorry. You're right.
You're
right.
I am tearing it down
bit.
a little much. So I'm just trying to bring you back to reality.
You are correct. And honestly, overall, this is not a huge gripe. It's just the way Graxus says, wasn't there an orientation? I wish, like, I'm with Kendra. I wish there was an orientation. I feel Kendra's frustration at this moment in that I wish I knew more about what she is.
I feel like Kendra expresses the exact same feeling, and that's why it works, because she's like, I feel like I could be doing more and that I should, but I don't know how. Mm-hmm. And I think that also goes with her age, and that, yes, she's done a lot of things, but she's still, like, she's never trained with, like, a sword. She doesn't know how she could, like, use her abilities in, like, combat or anything because she hasn't tried it, because she hasn't been put in that kind of situation or that kind of training. And so there are things that she just hasn't experienced, but what she does with her powers is enough. I don't know.
Okay.
It looked like you had something to say.
I do have a few more things to say, but that gets into spoiler territory. We don't have time to go into that. We don't have time to go into that
Okay,
right
fine.
now.
We'll come back to this because we keep coming back to this conversation, but we can never finish it because there's more stuff in the other books to mention.
Yeah. I'll come down off my soapbox.
No, you're good.
I needed to vent
This is a good discussion.
I'm feeling better now.
Okay.
I just needed to vent a bit of
also,
frustration.
I got a little
building
heated, but I was just like saying stuff.
No,
I'm
it's
not
fun
mad
when
at you at all.
it's fun when we're doing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
It made me push myself and realize, okay, yeah, I do have some flaws in my argument here.
Yeah.
And so now I'm able to be like, okay, well, I can get off my high horse and be like, okay, this is a softer magic system.
It's good to have strong opinions on a podcast.
Certainly, I hope you guys are entertained.
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to now come down a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Well, also, another thought. Do you think the magic system in Fablehaven is not as strongly defined because this was his first series, as opposed to something like
Five Kingdoms,
Beyonders, which has Atomic, or Five Kingdoms, which has Shaping?
I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, this does very much feel like not quite a rough draft, but like an early prototype. Like,
well, it's like it's less defined, and it might also be a consequence of it being on Earth, and that it's hard to define magic unless, I guess, Harry Potter kind of does it. But in like this version of Earth, like there's magic, but it's kind of harder to define because you're taking all these things like from mythology, like
Yeah.
satyrs and stuff. And how do you put all of these mythical things together and define it as a hard magic system?
And I feel like even Harry
That's
Potter
hard.
has a very soft magic system.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking about spells, but it's also kind of like
But
Harry waved his wand and all of a sudden there was a spell. I'm like,
And
how
even,
does that
like,
work?
however, just like spells work. Like, what is like the definition of like being a stronger wizard, or is it just that Dumbledore learned more magic?
It's true.
Or, like,
it is
what
pretty soft
is
now
the
that we talk about it.
definition of having more skill as a wizard? Or
Yeah.
they say some wands are more prone to transfiguration, but we don't ever really see that.
It is pretty soft.
It feels really soft now that I think about it.
And so I didn't thought of this before, but like I was saying, because it's on Earth and it's kind of hard to define when you put all these things together in this world that we already kind of know about. It's kind of hard to define. So that could be it too.
Interesting. Didn't think about that. Okay, that was
Neither
fun.
did I until just this second. So
That was really fun.
interesting.
And also, I think they came in a different time when people didn't like, oh, there's magic. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Don't ask
this was
questions.
before Brandon Sanderson. This was like at the same time he was
Or
writing
even before
Mistborn.
Brandon Mull
you know.
goes into Atomic and shaping with
Yeah.
Fight Beyond His-
Yeah, this was before he wrote his other books, and he hadn't really done hard magic as hard. Shaping is definitely the most defined out of all of them, but
even
Atomic
Atomic-
is more defined because he gives more rules about it, and like
Yeah, and
you
like
know.
even Christopher Paolini with Ancient Language
Exactly.
and Aragon.
That's what I was
It's a
thinking
bit.
too.
It's more hard defined. Like you can
Yeah.
only do as much as you have the energy for.
Which is how you do an Atomic too.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar. So yeah,
Yeah, this comes from an era where like when was this one published, or even when was
it was
it
like
2000?
2009.
Yeah, I feel like that
2010.
was when we were content with softer magic systems. But I feel like in general the fantasy world is now leaning towards like we like to think about why this works.
No, I kind of agree with that.
So
Yeah.
which I like personally, as you may have maybe possibly inferred from this simple discussion. I like a good defined magic system that I can reason at, I can understand, and like I can
And it's very fun
interpret.
because it like makes you think more, and you're like, whoa, this is like real because it's like so defined.
And having hard limits leaves room for cool interpretation. Like that's one of
Yes.
my things with Harry Potter films when they get to like the later movies and they're having like these battles and it's just like red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light. Or sometimes not even that. It's just like little flashes of like
a
light.
little flick of the wrist.
I like seeing hard defined limits being interpreted in interesting creative ways. It's like it's why I like wax. It's why I like Wax and Wayne, because both of them have
This
very
is a Brandon Sanderson
This is
book,
Brandon
by the way.
Brandon Sanderson.
Wax and Wayne.
Wax and Wayne. They have very defined power sets.
Yeah.
Like whereas before in previous books of the same universe, we had characters who had all of the powers combined into one. They were Mistborn.
Yeah.
Whereas now we have Mistlings or Mistings.
You're getting a little too close to spoilers.
Yeah, they are Mistings. They instead of having all
They have, like,
of the
one
abilities,
specific
they have
power.
one or two that they then can combine in very cool and interpretive ways.
And that's the cool thing about like hard magic systems is that when the characters find a way to kind of push the boundaries as much as they can in very cool, interesting ways, like you're saying, it's very cool.
Yeah. And I really enjoy those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because it really kind of buys into like it's a Chekhov's gun almost, in that that they have the ability and like okay, this is another Brandon Sanderson thing. The way he has
We're never going to shut up over Brandon.
a good plot twist needs a few things. It needs at the end of a plot twist, you should say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming," but "Oh my
But it
gosh,
makes
that
sense.
makes so much sense."
Like, I could have gotten there. But, you know who else is really good at Chekhov's gun? Brandon Mull.
he is very good at it. You are correct.
Okay. So, after the whole orientation thing.
Fun fact, there's a fairy king.
Yeah, exactly. And Kendra's like, wait, what? I wish there was a book I could read, kind of like the Dragon Slayers.
If only,
If only the woodpecker
skies, the bark on the tree was as soft as the skies.
Oh my gosh.
How did you pick up on that?
Because it's the same thing with how did the chicken cross the road? It goes off in my brain, and then I have to finish it.
I feel
If
like I've
only,
done that.
if only, have you never, everyone who has watched Holes and loves it, like I love that movie
you're
so
right.
much.
You did
They would
dress
think
up
of
as
it.
Stanley this year.
Yeah, That was my
for Halloween.
My Halloween costume was Stanley from Holes.
It was a baller.
I thought it was a fun costume.
It was a baller costume. All right. So yeah, fun fact: there's a fairy king, but he did.
Yeah, and that was the Astrids were his guards, and they failed in protecting him, and so they were basically like banished, kind of.
Yeah, and we talk like after. There's still some bitterness there on both sides because on the one hand,
millennia later,
the Astrids, when Kendra's approaching, they kind of like talk to her through Raxus, and they're just like, "So you're here to destroy this shrine too?" Savage.
Okay, and she's like, "Okay, there. Wait.
It was
the Fairy Queen's idea.
Consensual.
It was. I couldn't do it myself.
It was condoned.
She did it. So yeah, I was like, "Oh, that was a low blow."
Interestingly enough, like the reason they're so scared of that is because like the only slight thread of connection is the fact that they can try to guard these shrines.
Yeah,
shrines. Like do something to just be close to it.
If you couldn't tell, the Fairy Queen is holding a big old grudge because her husband was killed because of their negligence, and so she blames all of the Astrids and is still really pissed about it thousands of years later.
I low-key love the description it gives us.
Here, I'm just going to read this paragraph while you look for it. It's hard to say how responsible the Astrids were for the tragedy, but the queen blamed them, and she cast them out of service. 6 turned away and went dark. The other 90 remained faithful, clinging to the wish, one day earning her forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Which they seem to be far away from because when Kendra asks about the Astrids, saying, "Hey, what about them? Maybe they can help."
She asked the Fairy Queen.
This is directly to the Fairy Queen. Rage washed over Kendra. She felt angry and hurt, the bitter residue of an unforgivable insult. Yeah. It took her a moment to realize the furious emotion was not her own. It emanated from the Queen. "I have no interest in their manner of aid. You would do well to ignore them." Ooh. And Kendra's like, how long ago did they mess up? Eons ago. Their failure did irreparable damage. Time has not dulled my agony. The consequences of their negligence were permanent, and so shall be their exile.
And, wow, first of all, wow.
Yeah. And like...
Oh, what I was going to say is that it's interesting because after that, Kendra... We're just going to skip this part. That's fine. She's thinking, man, you know, I have fights with Seth, but we kind of get over it, and we're like children. And then she realizes that the Fairy Queen can read her mind. And the Fairy Queen's like, and she like says like, she like thinks other stuff. I don't know if you have it. Let's see. I think I might have it.
She's like, when you're at my shrine, do you know you don't have to talk out loud so I can hear you, right? Yeah. And Kendra's like,
oh my gosh.
And the thing is, it happens again. Because later on, the Fairy Queen gives Kendra the ability to, like, listen and hear the Astrids.
I found it.
And she says, she thinks to herself, do I even really want the help of these weird, creepy mutant owls? And the Astrids are like, again,
we can hear you. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm at that part.
She really needs to remember to censor her thoughts. There needs to be a filter, honey.
Is, you're not used to someone reading your thoughts.
Oh, so. For sure, but you gotta learn now at this point.
When at my shrines, you do not speak for me to hear. You've expressed yourself eloquently on behalf of the Astrids, and despite my potent emotions to the contrary, I deem it sound counsel. Unpleasant, infuriating, but sound. My people have not been able to communicate with the Astrids since the king was taken. I will remove that barrier. But then she keeps it up for herself. But what I was thinking of is that the emotions that the Fairy Queen expresses just reminds you that she is a magical creature.
Oh my gosh, you're totally... Sorry, keep going.
And through Kendra's influence, she changes and she learns to kind of forgive to a certain degree, and it's only because of Kendra's influence as a human that she does that.
Which, because of her isolation in the fairy realm, we can argue there's been very, very little of.
Very little change. Very little.
Very human.
Exactly.
Human influence.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, you are totally right.
Yeah.
As soon as you started talking, I started making the connection. I was like, oh,
When you were reading it, I was like, because I was thinking about what Kendra says, and I'm like, well, wait. And it really was weird to me. I was like, why does the Fairy Queen change so suddenly from like one moment to another? And I was like,
thinking about that when I
was
like,
oh, it's because of the direct mortal influence, and she kind of like sees it from that perspective, and she like lets it go to a degree. Like she's still very angry, and she's not letting herself communicate with the Astrid still, but it's just enough that it like changes her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Side note, interesting. My Astrids will not be the servants they once were. I stripped them of their power. They are hardly shadows of their former selves. You could give it back, Kendra. No, I cannot. Their energy now resides elsewhere. So, enough about the Astrids, unless there's anything else you have to add?
No, just that she can hear, Kendra can hear them in her mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's basically it.
Side note, from a little bit earlier in this conversation, Kendra thanks the Fairy Queen for saving her from the Oculus.
Yes.
And the Fairy Queen brings up, exactly, it's dangerous. And Kendra's like, well, I didn't really do it on purpose. And she's like, well, besides the fact that you could have your brain scrambled and reduced to a vegetative state, besides that, when you open yourself up to see, you open yourself up to being seen.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings up the point. The Sphinx has now used the Oculus. So the Fairy Queen got some insight on the Sphinx while he was using it. And the most interesting thing I think that comes out of this is I was surprised to discover that he is a man, not a creature in disguise. Probably so old because of magical tampering. I could not identify the exact means that he's lived so long, but I saw that he truly believes his cause is just. He is misguided. He knows that no prison can stand forever. He fears that one day others less capable than himself will release the demons and fail to bridle their power. He trusts himself to do it right, to hold their ferocity in check, but his motives are impure. In connection with his other motivations, he craves the power. He thinks he can bend the demons to his will, but he is mistaken. The world will pay if he breaches Zix.
It's so interesting.
Love that insight into the Sphinx.
To have that insight now, the second to last book,
after what
he's
done to Kendra,
important going into the next book because, you know, he's going to have to do a lot to accomplish his goal. And so to have that insight into why he's actually doing it is so interesting.
Yeah, he's basically Thanos. Doing something horrible.
He only trusts himself.
He only trusts himself to do it, and he genuinely believes that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that he's the only one that can do it.
Are like the most... Those are the villains that mess with your mind the most, because you're like...
Their convictions are so strong.
They're not just evil to be evil, which is like worse.
We also see that, again, one reached him from afar that helped him to wake from the Oculus, similar to how the Fairy Queen helped Kendra.
Yeah.
We don't know who, but something.
Some patron.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all I've got for Fairy Queen conversation, besides the fact that she's like, Patton inscribed the instructions on a rock and chucked it in my pool because I wasn't feeling very nice that day. I wouldn't let him get too close. I'll do you one better. Downloads the information to a soundbite directly into her brain.
Yeah. She sees it and okay, I guess I don't need to find the rock.
Mm-hmm. And then, but then the interesting thing is, Raxus finds out that
because she starts communicating with the Astrids and is like, okay, I'm going to the Dragon Temple. And then
when the Astrids say something about the Dragon Temple, about her going, Raxus is like, hang on, what? Hold up,
Raxus is like, I can read their thoughts too.
There's gotta be some censoring here, guys. Filters.
Yeah. Well, and then she's like, oh, maybe don't tell Raxus. And they're like, oh, he already knows.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
he
oh.
knows. Did you not want
Travels
to tell
fast, I guess.
Thoughts instantaneous.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Raxus is like,
are you crazy?
So
you're crazy.
You're going to the Dragon Temple. Usually, as a dragon, I should kill you because I know that, but I'm not going to. But I don't want to be involved in this, or else I would be completely torn apart because that is a big no-no.
Even just knowing that that's what she's planning, he becomes an accessory, and he's opened up to possibly being killed.
Yeah.
He's bad.
It's a bad situation, but it's a good thing Raxus is a good person.
We love Raxus.
Because he's like, Kendra's like, will you at least fly me there? And he's like,
I'll get you close.
I'll fly you near. But he's trying his hardest to convince her to not go. He's like, you are alone. Everything. You have no resources with you really to accomplish this. And she's like, I still have to try.
Yep.
Which, commendable.
And
Kendra.
Also, she gives him a little bit of a boost because the fairy, she realized a message from the fairy queen. She's like, the fairy queen said you have more strength than you realize.
Yeah.
Rax is perked up. Really? She said that?
Oh.
Her words. Well, that's encouraging. Although, she's basically my fairy godmother. An endorsement from a parental relative is nice, but hard to put on a resume. She is the queen of one of the realms, buddy!
Yeah. That's a big endorsement.
Just take the win!
Take the compliment, bro.
So he's like, okay.
So, yeah.
I'll pretend I never heard where you were going. I'll get you close.
He's like, I really don't want you to do this because I don't want you to die. She doesn't even know what a Hydra is. And he's like kind of freaking out like, Kendra, you don't even know what you're up against.
He's like, I'm a dragon. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Which means a bit more because Bronus knew about the Hydra. Raxus, who is a dragon, has only heard rumors about the Hydra.
So Kendra says she's thinking, how is she supposed to get by Hydra, let alone the other guardians? She was alone. Raxus was right. Going into the dragon temple would be suicide. Inside the knapsack, Warren had the unicorn horn. Maybe she and Raxus could take it to the gate of Wormroost and get out. So she's thinking, maybe I should try and leave, even though Navarog might be there, But she's thinking it would mean deserting her team and abandoning their quest. Seth would never run away. Would any of the others abandon her? No. She could at least investigate the Dragon Temple and the First Guardian before utterly forsaking the mission. She owed everyone that much. And so she goes. But
get it, girl.
She learns from the Astrids, after Raxus drops her off, she learns from the Astrids about her friends being taken to Thronus, and the Astrids snuck in because no one cares about Astrids. They just are Astrids? In the background, basically. And so they learned about the plan. They heard the whole plan.
They spied.
And so they know that her friends are coming and that they're alive. And so she's like, okay, I'll wait for them.
Interesting thing, the Astrids have kind of like a hive mind.
Yes.
These 12 have lived in such close proximity for so long without being to communicate with anybody else.
Yeah.
Because they're completely isolated from everyone else for eons. In case you guys didn't know, that's thousands of years.
That's very, very,
just
very
in case we weren't all on the same page.
Yeah.
Eons. They've created kind of a hive mind where what one sees, they all see, is what my understanding is.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and they speak usually as one when they're together because they're just so in sync with each other. So, yeah. And so Kendra now, she has a lot of mental breakdowns, but again, they're very, very all warranted. She has these emotional moments.
She's just a teenage girl.
Because she's a teenage girl in this impossible situation that she should never have been in. This girl deserves a few darn cries, okay? Let her have it. So she weeps in relief when she hears that her friends are okay.
It's amazing she's still functioning
Honestly,
after all of this trauma.
Honestly, agreed. So yeah, she's weeps in relief. The Astrids could help her hide the knapsack. Her brother and friends were alive, and she might not have to face the Dragon Temple alone.
She no longer felt entirely hopeless.
Also, side note, deep down, she had been, she says, I can at least investigate and then leave and get out and give some information to the next group.
Yeah.
Deep down, this is her, deep down thoughts from the very end of the chapter. She had been quietly resigning herself to the fact that she would have to retrieve the key on her own. She was not planning on turning back.
Yeah.
She was like, ride or die, we're doing this. She got some patent in her.
Yeah, she does.
She got some patent.
She's already faced, insane odds before.
And come out on top.
So, even though it's hard and it's terrifying, she's willing to try. And that shows just how brave she is. Kendra's freaking awesome.
Kendra's freaking awesome.
All right. Well, that ends the chapters for this episode.
A fun set, honestly. Yeah. This is a fun bit.
Cool. We got to see Seth using not only his shadow charmer skills, but his bargaining skills. The younger sibling.
Also quick thinking
negotiation,
skills.
Yeah. Thinking on his feet.
He got Mendigo to get Kendra out of there.
True.
He started improvising on the spot with the negotiations.
It's true.
Boy thinks on his feet.
He did well. He kept them from dying, so that's good.
Win.
Struck a bargain. We meet Raxtus. Freaking love Raxtus.
Kendra let out some
And then
emotions.
Kendra let out some emotion that she really needed to.
But also...
And she also knows that they're all alive and set up to go to the Dragon Temple.
And we are now very well equipped. We have some new swords, some new spears.
Yeah.
Got some more adamant
Some new
in our arsenal, in our repertoire.
It's true. So yeah.
We are as ready as we'll ever be
the
to
next
face the Dragon Temple.
episode, we will be finishing book 4.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
That's a lot.
There's only
gonna
4
be a
chapters
lot.
left.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
there's a lot.
There's 5.
There's 5.
There's
but
5.
there's a lot that happens in the last 5 chapters. We're going into the third act.
And they're going in hot.
Yeah, it's not going to slow down the entire book. Nope. So, all right.
Molalanche?
Yeah.
The mole version of the Sanderlanche?
Yeah,
Molalanche?
for all you that don't know, people in we're never going to stop talking about Brandon Sanderson, apparently.
They're both Brandons.
But hey, they're both Brandons, they're friends, whatever. We've gone over this. People have a word to describe, like, the last part of Brandon Sanderson books that just gets so good and just suck you in and just all happens at once.
You cannot put the book down.
It's called a
I'm surprised you were able to stop.
Sanderlaunch, like an avalanche, but with Sanderson.
Sanderlanche.
So, and we're getting into the Mole-lanche. That sounds really weird.
Mole slide?
Sounds like Mole slide. That's better.
Sanderlanche and Mole slide?
That's a better description. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Knights of the Dawn podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below or send us an email with any of your thoughts. You'll find us on pretty much any platform: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Look us up, listen to our other stuff. We'd love to hear from you guys. Email us at knightsofthedawnpodcast@gmail.com. But until our next time, I'm Jessica.
I'm Megan.
Drink the milk.
See ya.